The film Up is hailed as one of Pixar's best, and after watching it, I myself have to agree that Squirrel! Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. Don't worry, I've not quite gone insane yet. If you don't have any idea what that was about just now before the intro came, it's an insider for people who have already seen the film. If you are now curious to find out what that was, definitely do watch the film. But not only for that reason, also because I do have to say, while I haven't seen every Pixar film, I do feel that this is the best one I have seen to date. Interestingly, the film was directed by Pete Docter, who also did Soul, which I shortly released a review about as well. I'll leave a link to that at the end of this video. So it's quite interesting to see that another film of Pixar, which I find really good, was sort of driven by the same person. While Up does not ask nearly as much existential questions as Soul did, I still feel it is a great introspection into the human condition, I'll call it. And if you really pay attention to it and delve deep into it, there's a lot here to find. Because it's about, as per usual, I don't want to spoil too much. If you've seen the poster, you'll know that mainly we're focused on a house and there's an endless amount, seemingly, of balloons tied to it, and it's obviously flying somewhere, thus the name Up. What is it about beyond that? Well, it's actually difficult to talk about it without spoiling it at all. I'll still do my best attempt because I really want you to find it out yourself. It does pack some emotional blows here and there, which I feel I could take away from you if I talk about it too much, so definitely don't want to do that. We are focused on Carl, who is a pensioner, and I'll call it he wants to take one last trip with his house to Paradise Falls in South America. It's this beautiful sort of mountain which is overlooking a waterfall. It's smack dab in the rainforest, it does seem, and that is where he wants to go. He is joined on this journey by Russell, who I'm not quite sure if they mention how old he is. In any case, he's a young kid and he is a Boy Scout, and so these two are on this journey together. As you can imagine, it is actually quite an adventure story, so it's not quite as easy as it sounds. Interestingly enough, the situation of having a whole house that is being flown with helium balloons isn't actually the most troublesome thing that happens on the adventure. Actually, it's one of the easiest things that they have to deal with, which is quite interesting, I feel. But I won't spoil how it goes, whether they succeed or not. That I'll leave you to find out. There are various incidents that happen along the way, many of them really great, really entertaining, really unexpected. So there's a lot to discover here, which I really strongly encourage you to do so. Now, this whole film hinges on the character of Carl. He is played or spoken by, I should say, Ed Asner, who is really a perfect choice for this role. The voice really works well with the character, and I would assume that the design was slightly based on him as well. I'll talk about the design a bit later. I'll focus on the character himself right now. So he is a pensioner, of course. He sees this as his last voyage in life. That's what he wants to do, and he's got his own personal reasons for it. And the film explores a lot of those reasons and emotions, feelings that he has, and the juxtaposition of him being with a young kid. It's obviously a hint at, long lost days and what was I like as a kid, and can I rediscover some of that? All these kinds of aspects. But the thing that I find is so great about this film is it doesn't seem to, while it is sort of taking cliches that we are known and used to, it seems to use them in really new and unexpected ways. So all the things that happen, I feel, didn't seem really cliched. It seemed really organic and very creative, actually, in many ways. It's not just regarding his story. So you would think at first that it's very predictable what's going to happen and that, but I feel that particularly the emotional punches, they are placed in ways that I did not expect them to happen. The character of Carl is the focus of the story. We have Russell as well, and he also is a very interesting character. He is a kid, and here they do have the cliche of him being annoying, although annoying is meant in the sense of he's just being a kid. And as an adult, I find myself as well just feeling many things that kids do annoying. But at the same time, I realise they're normal, they're things that every kid just does. It's because, of course, they're not as experienced, they haven't seen so many things in life, they do things where you know the outcome won't be any good, but they still do it anyway. And you can imagine, particularly in an adventure, Russell gets into a lot of trouble and there's many things that annoy Carl and actually are more like a roadblock to the journey. But again, like I say, while it is quite cliched, it's not overdone, it's done in a very good way, and ultimately you have to say, well, it's a kid, you know, they just do these things. Back to Carl, he is sort of reluctant. I won't explain how the two come together, I won't do that, but he's very reluctant to take on Russell on this journey, and the two, they grow fond of each other over time and they learn from each other, and it's just a really beautiful journey to watch the two of them go through. I also think it's a great choice to have a sort of adventure tale with a pensioner, actually, because typically you'd have these stories, you'd have some character in it, like I'll call it maybe The Rock or maybe someone like that, you know, to have a really action heavy plot going on, etc. So I love the fact that we have a small kid and a pensioner here, and they're doing also very much actiony things at times, but still immediately there cannot possibly be as much action just to the physical limitations. And that's what I find very interesting here, because it is absolutely not a hindrance. Actually, on the contrary, it makes for a lot of creative situations where they have to find another solution to how they're going to get out of places, and it's really well done. There were also other characters, I'll call them, a lot of animals here, as you can imagine. With them going to the rainforest, they meet a lot of animals along the way, and while I won't say which animals specifically, again, like with the story and the characters, I feel that you expect a certain cliche to happen. You expect animals to just be a sort of slapstick addition to an animated film, which is not the case here. So they're really creative in how they use them, and these animals actually become characters themselves, which is really interesting, and they interact with Carl and Russell. The animals, which in many films can feel just sort of tacked on just to tick off boxes because you need cute animals, etc. Here they really fulfill quite a purpose, and they turn into really interesting characters that you're happy to see and watch and follow on screen. And like I say, they actually become part of the cast, which is really interesting. As it is an animated film, you of course need to talk about the animation itself, the style, etc. I had to remind myself, just within the first few minutes of the film, that was actually released in 2009. So 12 years ago, which is a really long time in anything that involves computer graphics. And I really must say that the computer graphics and the animation in Up is phenomenal. It's really good. You have so many scenes that are just breathtaking to look at. In particular, I just loved what they did with the balloons. Now, this sounds very silly, but what you have these wide shots where you see the entire house being lifted and carried by just this massive balloons. And it was just the surface quality and the texture of these balloons. They just looked so incredibly real. And also them being very colourful, of course, it just makes for a really beautiful image. And then you've got the light coming on top, really fascinating. The movement, obviously they don't all just move in unison. You might have a wind gust coming to sort of just push some of them out of the way, and all this is done in a really beautiful manner to look at. So particularly the balloons, like I say, may sound silly, but yes, really wonderful. But also the rest of the scenery, the characters are done very lovingly. What I like is it's not done in an ultra realistic way, so they're not striving for this. It is its very own style, and I think it fits really well, not only the story but the characters too. Carl in particular was a really fun one to watch, because there was something with Carl where in the first few minutes I was just sitting there, I was going like, you know, something about him feels really familiar to me, just with his whole looks, etc. Until my wife said to me, he kind of looks like your dad, and I thought, actually, that is absolutely the truth. It was so funny. Now, Dad, if you're watching this, I'm really sorry, but it's so it just reminded me so much. My dad's also a pensioner, and also not the fastest on his feet nowadays, and a bit grumbly, and just the image of Carl sitting on his chair in the living room, you know, maybe with the newspaper, or just looking at the TV or so, or on the chairlift, you know, going down the stairs. was just the very image to me. But that aside, that's just very personal for me. The design of Carl, it's done really well, so he is really brought to life just as a whole. Again, it's probably really difficult to have an adventure story where your protagonist is actually a pensioner who isn't the most agile, but they make it work in so many ways, particularly because while he is being gruff most of the time, as you can imagine, as the film progresses, he sort of lightens up a bit, opens up a bit, and you can really see this also in the animation. So it's done really beautifully. Pixar here, I feel, is just firing on all cylinders. It's really a great entertaining film to look at. Now, there are still a few other Pixar films that I want to check out over time. I won't do them all now, of course. I want to watch other films as well, particularly for the channel, but I will return to them definitely. I believe that Pete Docter also did Inside Out, which is a film that I'm very interested, just from the small tidbits I have heard about it. That one I will definitely check out. But if you want a recommendation from me, all the Pixar films I've seen until now, I do definitely feel that Up is the best of them. Who knows, maybe some other film will supplant it and take its place, but for now it's definitely my number one. It's also not a long film, and it just passes so quickly because you're having so much fun watching these characters in these bizarre situations. Really creative humour, really unexpected. They subverted my expectations a fair few times. I definitely need to say that. I do have a few scenes in here that may seem a bit heavy, particularly if you're watching with children, but I don't think it's a bad thing to insert these kind of things into kids' films, because it's life basically, and sooner or later you will have to talk about these things. Who knows, maybe it's actually easier to do it because they've got the context of the film than maybe if something happens in their own lives, you know. So I quite like that, because they don't just Pete Docter in particular doesn't seem to just want to do the typical kids film. He wants to do more, just for all ages, make it work for all, and I do feel that he's definitely achieved it here, like he did in Soul, but even better in Up. Well, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please like, share and subscribe. That's the best way to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next video on Flying Wiener. Take care, bye. Squirrel!